You're listening to Soap Dirt, the latest in television entertainment news.
Hey there, reality TV fans. It's Soap Dirt, and we're going to talk today about American Pickers, specifically about what happened to Frank Fritz from American Pickers. This is something that people want to know, and it's a really interesting story. You may remember that he was a cast member from the very start of the History Channel series, but then everything changed in 2021, and there's still drama going on with this. So that's why everybody's asking what happened to Frank on American Pickers. You may remember that Frank Fritz was one of the original hosts when the History Channel show began airing. If you know anything about the show, pickers are people that travel around America looking for things that they can resell to clients. And it comes from just different places where they pick stuff up. It could be estate sales. It can be just all kinds of things. But they specialize in finding things of value to resell. The show premiered on January 18th, 2010 on the History Channel. So that's 13 years ago? Pretty amazing. The show filmed Frank and Mike Wolf, who is the creator of the series, and also Mike's office manager, Danielle Colby. Frank Fritz had a story called Frank Fritz Finds that is in historic downtown Savannah, Illinois. Mike, the guy who created the show, his store is called Antique Archaeology. Both Mike and Frank narrate the show, and they explain that they travel the back roads of America looking to buy rusty gold, is what they call it. On American Pickers, they look for amazing things buried in people's garages and barns, and they make a living telling the history of America one piece at a time. The show debuted to more than 3 million viewers and then spiked up to more than 5 million viewers. That is amazing for, it's essentially a basic cable show. It was a successful pairing with Mike working with Frank, but then something happened to make Frank Fritz leave the show. So what happened? Well, Mike Wolf blamed Frank for him leaving the show. So what happened with Frank? There was a lot of things going on, including some big medical issues. It was in March 2020 that the last episode featuring Frank on American Pickers aired. At the time, he was dealing with some really intense back pain. Frank said that he was always picking up heavy things, which is the nature of their business, going around and digging through barns, digging through stuff, looking for trinkets, and sometimes it's heavy stuff they dig through. Makes sense. Frank said that it was hurting for a really long time, so he went to see a doctor, and the doctor told him that the pain that he had was considered critical. He needed surgery, and he needed surgeries right away. So he did get the surgery, and when surgeons went in, they put 2 rods in Frank's back. It took almost 200 stitches to put him back together at the end of this really extensive and detailed operation. So Frank's back was doing great after the treatment, but then other things happened. So one of the things Frank also has is Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune disorder that affects the digestive system. If you know anything about Crohn's disease, it's really nasty and inconvenient. Like after you eat, you can get just spontaneous diarrhea. It's really can be messy, and no pun intended, but it's definitely something hard to deal with. And because it's an autoimmune disorder, what you eat and your stress level can really affect it. There are medications to control it, but if your stress and what you're putting into your body aren't under control, then the illness can just run amok and really screw with your life. So Frank left the show to get treatment for his Crohn's disease, and as Crohn's disease, as part of it, he quit drinking, and he lost almost 70 pounds, which is huge life changes, both of those. But Frank Fritz really wanted to come back to American Pickers. So he contacted the History Channel, but according to him, they didn't seem too interested in bringing him back. Meanwhile, they kept filming while he was taking care of his health problems, and they didn't seem to miss him that much. They just kept working with Mike and Danielle. But, since he'd been on the show from the get-go, a lot of fans kept asking, where's Frank? What happened to Frank? Why aren't we seeing Frank on American Pickers? So let's dig in now to what happened with Frank and Mike and their American Pickers feud. So more than a year after Frank took his leave of absence, Mike confirmed on Instagram that his former co-host would not be back. At the time, he said that they were, quote, like brothers, and said a little about how they'd known each other for years. Mike said he'd miss Frank from the show and that he was praying for him, but Frank wasn't buying all of this. In fact, he called shenanigans on what seemed like a very heartfelt message to a longtime friend issued by Mike to Frank. But Frank took umbrage with this, and according to an interview in Country Living, he said that his supposed friend Mike didn't even care enough to check on him after his surgery. Well, that seems to conflict with the narrative of the message that Mike posted, right? So then Danielle had stepped up to co-host with Mike when Frank was off the show, and that marked, an end of an era on American Pickers, which was huge for fans and people like Danny, but still, it's not Frank. Frank is that missing piece of the puzzle for a lot of viewers. Also, American Pickers didn't really address his absence. And then COVID hit, and the company that makes American Pickers, Cineflex Productions, had to shut down filming. So there was that going on, and then there was building irritation from the fan base. Once Mike went on Instagram and confirmed Frank Fritz's exit from the show, a lot of fans got really upset. They were on fire about it. They said that having Danny co-hosting with Mike was just boring. Meanwhile, Frank had more to say. He said that he and Mike had been fighting for years. And then he said that the show was slanted towards Mike to make the other guy look better. So there's clearly a lot of hurt feelings in this. So basically, if you're looking for answers to what happened to Frank on American Pickers, the first is that he took a break for back surgery, and then, according to him, he thought that the door was open for him to return after he dealt with this chronic and painful medical issue. But when he went back to that door, it looks like it was closed against him. At least that's what Frank Fritz says. Meanwhile, Danielle Colby said that she wished things could have been different for them. She also said that Frank had been, quote, unwell for years and that he caused a lot of pain for himself. And she said she was sad for the struggles that Frank was going through. So there seems to be a dynamic there, some kind of undertone. And from Frank's perspective as to what happened on American Pickers, from his tone and his comments, it feels like they were waiting for a chance to get rid of him. But there's even more to the story. Frank Fritz told The Sun that after the split with him from the show, he checked into rehab for alcohol addiction, and that's when he was fired. Also, during his recovery from the major back surgery, he had a messy split from his longtime girlfriend, Diane Bankson. Frank Fritz's last appearance on American Pickers was in March 2020.
Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you don't want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.